Hi guys, so today's video is going to be a series review on the Seven Realms series by Cinda Williams Chima. This is a young adult fantasy series. There are 4 books total, which is really nice because I find normally in fantasy you either have trilogies or you have series that just kind of feel like they're endless. This series though is mainly a dual perspective fantasy. It follows 2 main characters with the occasional other perspective mixed in. These 2 main perspectives though are Han Alistair, who is a street thief, and Reza Anna Mariana, who is the heir to the throne of the queendom. When we're first introduced to these characters, their perspectives are quite narrow and they mainly are focused on the things that involve them. Han has grown up very, very poor and he's kind of gotten himself into quite a bit of trouble from an early age. He's known as the street lord of this gang and he's trying to reform himself. He's trying to better himself, mainly so that he can try to be there for his mother and his little sister. Reza, on the other hand, as you can imagine, being heir to the throne, has quite a different life. She is becoming almost eligible for marriage, so for her, she's trying to navigate the fact that she is heir to the throne. She's trying to kind of just figure out the whole political scene. And what I really loved about these 2 characters that I thought Cinda Williams Chima did such an amazing job with is that they were flawed. When you first meet them, they're very much products of the way they've been raised. So Han is kind of rough around the edges. He doesn't really trust very many people. Reza is she's a little bit rash, maybe a little bit carefree at first, because even though she's going to have all these responsibilities, she doesn't quite have them yet. And I really appreciated that about this series. I love when the main characters initially are not that lovable, but you see room to grow and you feel like you're growing with them. I think as the series progressed and you saw their journey, you kind of start to like them more. Maybe for some people, they'll really like them right off the bat, but for me, I didn't love them, but I didn't mind that I didn't love them at first because I liked that I was going to love them and that I started to love them as the series went on. As for what their journey is and what the plot of the books are, it's somewhat difficult to pinpoint because of the fact that it's a multiple point of view story and there is a pretty big world that Cinda Williams Chima has created in this series. And definitely a plus about this series is the world is quite fleshed out. I find that in a lot of young adult fantasy, it lacks the world building that adult fantasy has, but at the same time, it also has all of the character-driven plot points that you normally get in young adult alongside this really good amount of world building. Because the book is dual perspective and the perspectives are so different when you first get introduced to everyone, you get to see different sides of the world. The world that Han Alistair knows is very difficult. He's used to having to struggle just to make it. And for Reza, she's kind of starting to be introduced to all these political rivals that might be a threat to the queendom and to her family's throne. For instance, there is something called a wizard council in this series, so there is some magic, and these people are not allowed to marry into the throne's bloodline just because of some history that's happened way back in the day. People don't really trust wizards, but they keep them around. It's kind of like keep your enemies close sort of thing. And beyond this, not only is there the political realm and then the wizards who are sort of part of the political realm and then the common people that Han Alistair is with, there's also the clans known as the Demon Eye. Pretty much none of these groups get along because of the history of the world, which you do get more information about as the series goes on, but due to the history, these people are all very much at odds with one another. They don't trust each other, they don't like each other, they do not want the other to be involved in the throne or involved in politics in any way. Eventually though, a lot of stuff does go down. There's a lot of people at each other's throats. There's a lot of backstabbing and not knowing who to trust, and honestly, in the first book, there's not necessarily a set plot point in the first book that the characters are all aiming towards or anything like that. And there's not really a set antagonist either. You don't really know who the bad guy is. You don't really know who to trust. Because this is a series review, I do want to touch on a little bit the other books in the series. I've already kind of given an overview of the first one. It is quite introductory. It is a little bit on the slower side, but if you're the kind of person that really likes to get to know your characters and to really get to know the world, I think you'll be perfectly fine with the pacing of the first one. That said, the second one is going to be a big win for a lot of you who are fans of any kind of magic school setting, because the second one is at a school. You are going to see more of the characters' growth in the second one. You do get more of the world through this school. You start to see a little bit more of the magic. You get to know the characters a little bit better. And something I really liked is you get to see the characters grow with one another. So there's a lot of interactions between the characters that kind of highlight their personalities and maybe also their flaws. It is a young adult fantasy series, so the characters are all young adult aged, and in this school setting, I think it really allowed for them to be shown navigating what it is like to have friends and to have enemies and to fall in love and then maybe fall out of love. The third book in the series, I would say, is when stuff starts to really go down. The first book is very introductory. You're getting to know the characters. The second book, you're getting to know the characters a little more. The characters are getting to know each other a little more, and they're getting to know themselves better. They're getting to figure out their capabilities in this school setting. And then in the third book, it's kind of like whether or not you feel like you learned enough, stuff is happening and it's time to get to business. I am super happy I read the series after all 4 of them were already out, because I would not have wanted to wait to get to this 4th one after reading the 3rd one. I just thought this last one was such a great ending to this series. It's very action-packed. You just are not sure how things are gonna get resolved. You have no idea how you're gonna figure out who has been doing what and who is backstabbing who. You don't feel like you're gonna get all these answers by the end of the book, so it makes the book feel really fast-paced. It makes it feel really intense. There are also a lot of little details that were laid out throughout the other 3 books that come into the picture in this last one. It makes the whole series feel very cohesive. It makes it feel like you at no point had like a wasted character or a wasted scene. Everybody is significant in some way at some point in this last book. There is also a love story in this series. There's a little bit of a forbidden love story, which I know a lot of people really love that. And something that I thought that the author did an amazing job with is that because the characters have gone through various relationships in the series, they've kind of fallen for somebody and then things didn't work out. By the time these 2 characters in the end, I'm not going to say who the characters are, but by the time these 2 characters in the end are recognizing their feelings for one another, it doesn't feel like they're just falling for the first person that comes across their way like you sometimes get in books. It really does feel like they are in love with one another, that they appreciate certain elements of the other person. They appreciate different things about their personalities, and they're comparable. They challenge one another, but in the end, they really, really do love one another and care for one another. As far as the writing and storytelling overall, I thought the author did such a great job, like I said before, with the world building. She really tells you all of the details about the way things smell, the way things look, the way things feel, so you get a lot of sensory details, and it doesn't really feel like overload. It just kind of really makes the world come to life. She also does a really good job of making the characters speak in a way that is representative of their backgrounds. So for instance, because Han grew up living on the streets primarily, he has almost a slang way of speaking, where Reysa, she's the heir to the throne, so she's very proper in how she speaks. One thing I do want to mention about this series that honestly wasn't a big deal for me whatsoever, but maybe might be a downside for some other people, is the way in which the magic is shown. There are characters in the book that are wizards and they are able to use magic, and the rules and limitations of the magic system are not all that detailed. It's not like you know every single thing that every single wizard can do and how much strength everybody has and every single spell. You don't get that in depth with the magic, and for some people that's a bit aggravating. They really like to know, wait, is this possible? So if this is possible, does that mean they can do this? Some people really need all those answers, and if you're one of those people, you're not really going to get that with this series. I think if you are a fan of world building, if you're a fan of slow character growth, seeing a character start from one place and really turning into this awesome character by the end, if you're into that and character-driven stories, I think you're really gonna like this series. I also think that there's a good amount of intrigue and a good amount of backstabbing and almost a slight bit of whodunit. If you've read this series, let me know who's your favorite character, which of the books in the series was your favorite, what were your thoughts overall. And if you haven't read the series but you're interested in it and it sounds like something you'd be into, I would definitely say give it a go. That's it though. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you all have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you guys later. Bye.